Welcome to Multiple Offers, a real estate show with competing perspectives. Today we are talking about Strata 101.
Put that coffee down.
If you're good at something, never do it for free.
How'd you get the gig? Oh, they were hiring. It was only a 2-week course.
I will sell this house today.
What are you, some kind of real estate agent?
He's a realtor. There is a difference somehow.
This is Multiple Offers, a real estate show.
All right, guys, it is episode 32. Today we're going to be chatting about Strata 101, and this is going to take up probably the bulk of the episode because there's a lot you need to know if you're getting into a strata for the first time. It's probably going to take up more than one episode, to be completely honest. I apologize if I sound differently. I'm getting over a cold.
Yeah, what's going on with your voice?
I'm just, well, let's not talk. Matt got so mad when we were talking about the neti pot last time, so we'll just leave that one alone.
Well, my body's completely ridded itself of all sickness.
Maybe you sent it to me. That's possible.
It's probably possible. We shouldn't be sharing donairs anymore.
No more sharesy.
Might have to stop that. But
yeah. So what's going on before we spend like an hour talking about stratas and what people need to know? Jer, what have you been doing?
Well, that's what's going on with me. I'm 100% cured.
Okay.
But you have it now.
Yeah.
I won't say much more than that just because there's just so much to talk about in terms of Strata 101. And we're going to have 102 or 201.
I don't think it'll be advanced level next time. It's probably 102.
102.
Yeah.
But let's, I'm not going to say too much because there's just so much to talk about.
Okay.
Matt, what's going on with you?
Oh, I've been working. This thing called real estate.
Okay.
Yeah, try to sell listings, try to get buyers.
But it's Christmas time.
It's still
It's
November.
not even December yet.
If you're not sure if you should still be working and you're a realtor, listen to last episode.
Yeah.
Home before the holidays.
So
keep working.
So no Christmas stuff in
Keep
November.
working. Yeah, so I've been keep working. I've got all sorts of stuff to do this week, and it's fun. It's very rewarding. And, if it all goes well, it means we have a good Christmas.
Nice.
You tell the kids that. Not sure if Christmas is coming this year, but let's see how the week goes.
Well, we had an emergency vet visit last week, and it's like, I think Christmas is canceled.
Everything's okay with the emergency visit?
Yeah. It still cost a lot of money to make sure that everything was okay, but everything's okay.
Right. Okay, good.
What's up with you?
So you have to say Santa might be on a budget this year? Or you just go the opposite and you're like, I don't know, I guess maybe you weren't good enough. Try harder next year.
I saw a Facebook post from Santa this morning.
Okay.
Yeah, and Santa was saying like, hey guys, I'm not sure when you missed the memo, but Santa has always brought sort of a basic kind of gift for kids.
Yeah.
Everybody gets one sort of simple gift from Santa. That's what I do. I just want everybody to have something sort of fun. But this crazy stuff like a tablet or a remote control car or a drone helicopter, that's not my gig. Why'd you start to think that that's the Santa Claus thing?
So, Jer, should we tell Matt the truth about Santa?
Hey, Santa was on Facebook and he told me this. And the reason why, he's like, look, when Jimmy down the street gets, a book and then...
Yeah, it's a hard conversation for kids to, when they get to school, to be like, well, I was good. Why was Santa so much nicer to you than me? That's
very complicated. So Santa got on Facebook and tried to clear the air, but I don't think he's going to be able to reach the parents. They don't seem to believe in him or listen to him.
Okay.
Have you thought about exploring other options for the festivities, like cheaper ones? Like maybe there's it's like other holidays that you don't have to spend. There's no gifts.
Like you just pick a different holiday?
Yeah, just say, no, kids, we're actually exploring whatever
Festivus
or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally down with the feats of strength. My family is pretty much the only crowd where I could win.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Well, speaking of Festivus and Christmas, I represented Multiple Offers solo last night at the office Christmas party.
That was not by design, Jeff.
I was
sorry.
Feeling very betrayed that the two of you weren't at the Christmas party.
It's November though.
Is that why you didn't go?
It's mostly just principle. Just because I don't feel like, some people
I will direct the audience to listen back 5 minutes when Jer said, it's Christmas. Why are you working?
Well, I've just been off all week, so I thought we were starting Christmas early. But I don't know. It's weird. Like, when you do you're not supposed to have Christmas stuff out until after Remembrance Day.
I did think it was a weird time of year that they picked it.
So
Yeah.
I know it's like there's booking and things like that, but it feels weird to have an actual office, like any office Christmas party, real estate, whatever, in the month of November.
I thought one of the realtors was going to lose it on the bartender. He ordered 2 glasses of wine. She slid them over, and she was like, "That'll be $38."
Come on.
Oh yeah, and he was an older guy. I won't say who it was. And he's like, "I didn't order the bottle."
I thought you were saying he's going to be mad because there was no like rum and eggnogs.
Oh no, he was just super pissed at the prices, which
that was at the golf club.
Yeah, which is funny because the wine was super expensive, but I was drinking scotch for $7, so I don't know what.
So there's Jeff's holiday pro tip.
Yeah,
go for the scotch.
Go for the scotch. So yeah, we got a lot to get into, and I think we're going to kind of look at it from a standpoint of when you're coming in, and maybe you're the first time buying into a strata, or there's going to be lots for people who already live in stratas who maybe aren't paying as much attention. But we're really going to come into this with the idea of trying to help out somebody who is jumping into a strata with kind of a beginner mindset. And we kind of discussed starting off with understanding how bylaws worked.
Skipping the news.
So we're going to skip the news.
Skip my segment again, Jeff?
This is my power play.
And we even had a good example that a listener brought up that we wanted to chat about, but we're just
okay. So we're getting into main topic here.
We're getting right into
full
main topic
discussion.
time.
Let's do it.
time.
Okay.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
You decide your own level of involvement.
Well, I guess this is a case where we'll have to agree to disagree.
I don't agree to that.
Neither do I.
Wrong.
National debt.
Wrong.
You're not advocating.
Wrong with that money. Lost one.
Very nice words, but happens to be wrong.
You're listening to Multiple Offers, a real estate show.
All right, so let's talk bylaws.
Which on the surface sounds like a boring thing to talk about.
Sounds like a boring thing to talk about.
Bylaws.
Yeah, by law.
Why do I care about bylaws? Well,
Because it really affects what you're doing in that property, from pets. Want to get into?
what always starts, I mean, I think the first thing people do have to look at, and often when somebody says, "Oh, I'm thinking about your listing, can I see the bylaws?" It's because there can be some fundamentally important things for an individual's lifestyle that can just there deal breaker, can't do it. Right?
I think there's fundamentally three things.
Ooh, tell me.
Every buyer, when they say bylaws, they're thinking, what pets am I allowed? Am I allowed pets? What are the rental restrictions? And am I allowed to barbecue? I think those are the first three things that come to people's minds when they're thinking about bylaws.
Yeah, and you'd think with the barbecue thing that it's something that just it's a patio. That's what you do on patios.
Yeah,
but not the case with every building.
No, there are definitely buildings that still do not allow barbecues.
So let's bang that one out quick. So yeah, barbecues usually they're allowed. I would say 95% of buildings that we have.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, a lot of them will have like no charcoal.
There's a limit on the type of barbecuing.
Yeah.
So usually it's just an electric grill, so you're George Foreman or what have you. Your regular propane, little guys, big guys. And it can still come down to, I mean, I've known people who have had little smokers or little charcoal barbecues on their patios, and nobody's said anything about it. They're just not as strict of a strata. So that's one thing.
Well, that's probably something with bylaws that is important, and I could be getting myself into trouble by saying this. It's only a problem when other people start complaining.
Right.
Like,
if you're doing a brisket out there.
Nobody's doing spot checks in your condo and walking in and being like
barbecue inspection.
It's when somebody sees that cat in the window and there's no cats allowed, or
you're only allowed one
barking.
cat, but you've got a black one and a white one, and
Totally.
people are like, hey, wait a second.
Yeah, so if you're gonna break the cat rule, get the same colors.
Yeah, try to get them to match a little
set.
bit. That's definitely the pro tip.
Yeah, which I did not recommend.
I mean, that's the thing, though, is as soon as one person starts getting picky about one bylaw, it's the old adage with every neighborhood, don't throw stones if you live in a glass house, right? You don't want to start rocking the boat and turn it into something where somebody's constantly sniffing around for bylaw violations.
Are people throwing stones at Glass House now?
That's a great inside joke.
Port Royal joke.
Glass House is a name of a building in Queensboro.
I've even seen some stratas where there's like designated individuals who are like the enforcement people.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so what you're looking at as a buyer when you're investigating this stuff, and I always say to people, you know, the bylaws are there to give teeth if there's something that's really disrupting all the rest of your neighbors.
Yeah.
And now some of them want to be more specific than others. But if you read the minutes of each meeting and it says, hey, you know, we got a violation, fine issued, violation, fine issued, violation, fine issued, you're like, oh, wow, these guys are...
They're on top of it.
Yeah.
The pet detectives are going around door to door and checking for meows and woofs.
Yeah.
Usually and maybe you guys can tell me if you agree or not, but usually if it's a building that allows dogs or cats, they're fairly okay with the animals. If it's just cats though, you know, usually that means they're a little bit more strict about their pet bylaws. Whereas you see if it's 2 dogs allowed, 2 cats allowed, one or the other. I mean, a lot of times in buildings like that, I see people with 3, and it's not really, no one's necessarily policing it.
I think it's building to building, and I think getting away with an extra cat. I think a lot of people are getting away with extra cats. It's very hard to get
because
caught.
they're indoor. You're not really disrupting anybody else, right? But when you're in and out with a dog constantly, if you're in and out with 2 dogs, or if you've got a very dog that barks a lot, you're really changing the way that people share the environment with you.
Yeah.
So that's something that you need to look at when you're looking at pets. And then the complicated one is when people are looking at bylaws is size restriction on dogs. Right? It's like, dogs are allowed. So you're starting to look at a strata and you go, oh, it says dogs are allowed. Well, this one says there's a weight restriction, or this one says there's a height restriction.
Yeah, and where is that height restriction? Is it the height of the dog? Is it to the shoulder? Is it like exactly how are they calculating? Who is there with the measuring tape?
I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody actually getting measured.
No.
Or it's just more of a deterrent that, hey, we like, around this size.
Yeah, we want small dogs, or we want medium to small.
I'm just going to get on my soapbox and say that those bylaws are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because the size of the dog doesn't matter. No fear.
It's owned...
It's not the size of the fight in the dog.
I've owned many dogs, and my most badly behaved dog, loved her to death, was the only little dog I've ever owned. Because... Yeah.
Hey, let's be clear. Not all little dogs are troublemakers, but they're just as likely to be a troublemaker as a big dog.
I think there are a lot more really high-strung, naturally breeds of little dogs than bigger dogs.
And the biggest...
you can have bad... I'm not saying... Like, there are lots of badly behaved big dogs, and it has to do with training, and there's a ton of it. But you get a lot of, like... There's a lot of high anxiety little breed dogs, like Jeremy's dogs or dog.
I think the important thing is that to me, what bothers me is that there's no logic in it.
Yeah.
I guess except that maybe the logic could be if people are scared of dogs and you're sharing the elevator with an 80-pound dog, it's just a bit intimidating if that's not your thing.
Which is the other caveat is sometimes there isn't a size restriction. Sometimes there's a vicious breed restriction.
There can be that,
which can be open to a lot of interpretation.
Definitely. So that's the kind of the pets thing. There's a lot to look at when you're getting some advice from your agent, so pay attention.
And we have had instances where it was a strata that only allowed 1 dog, and we had a buyer who had 2 dogs, but one was an elderly dog, so maybe it only had a couple of years left, and they were able to make a concession. So get your realtor if it's if that is the case where we understand after this we will only have 1 dog, but there have been instances that they've said it's okay for that one. There's one exception, and it's only for a couple of years, and you can't buy another one.
So let's move on to rental restrictions.
Yeah, and I think that applies too with the idea of understanding the dog bylaws. Understand the rental bylaw.
Yeah,
because there's research you can do. Often, if there is a limit on the number of units that can be rented, it's typically around 10% of the total number of units in the development. That's kind of the rough number.
Yeah, although it can be anything.
Yeah, but 10% is kind of the go-to. And then by default, we tend to often assume that if there is a cap, that building is at its maximum.
Right.
The odd thing is sometimes it's actually not.
This is true.
But it's not very common.
Yeah.
And the listing agent, if you're representing the buyer, like if we're representing the buyer, the agent isn't necessarily always fully informed on that. Yeah. It can take a lot of legwork to find those out.
The section on, when you're looking actually at the MLS sheet itself, the information sheet, it says number of rentals or percentage or number, and then there's just a number.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even really explain typically whether that's referring to the percentage of units in the strata, or is it actually that's just the number.
I always assume it's the number. I mean, it might be wrong. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen somebody actually fill in the percentage. You could. The thing I think is important for people to understand is the exception to immediate family rule. So if I want to rent to my mom or my kids, it doesn't matter what the cap is. I'm always allowed to do that. It's also important to know that your siblings don't count. It's either your parents or your kids are considered the immediate family. They can never stop you from renting to that.
Yeah.
The other question is, what if I want to have a roommate?
As long as you're occupying the unit.
Yeah, that's the way it should be done.
Yeah.
That is not the way some stratas enforce it.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I got really upset when I heard that once.
Yeah.
Somebody told me, like, oh, I want a roommate. My strata won't let me, so I'm going to have to sell. I said, no way.
Yeah.
You live in there. That's your home.
Well, and how is that any of the strata's business? What if that roommate is your boyfriend or girlfriend?
Yeah.
Or you're just having a sleepover.
No, but how do they, why is it okay to have somebody who's not on title in a romantic relationship in there, but you can't just have a roommate?
It's nonsense.
It's nonsense. And I think if it ever got challenged, it would get thrown out.
Oh, it would never hold up. But some of these stratas are so forceful in it that they really make the person believe.
That's important to know, too, is just because a strata is telling you something, not all. Most stratas are great. I'm not trying to knock stratas, but there are some stratas out there that are enforcing bylaws that they have no right enforcing.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really good point, Jeff, is everything we bring up today typically is going to be the most extreme example.
Yes, totally.
Right?
Stories that we've had happen to us.
It's more to warn the consumer or even a lot of our agent listeners out there that these are the things that we're watching out for.
Right, yeah. Be careful of these things. 80 to 90% of the stuff you're going to come across are just people trying to run a building efficiently and doing a great job.
Basic status
and they're
quo.
volunteers. They're not getting paid. So, yeah, that's a very good point.
And when it comes to rentals, a couple of things that are really interesting to watch out for now with bylaws is a lot of them are adding language around no short-term rentals. So they don't want the Airbnb
the anti-Airbnb clause,
right? Some of them say a rental term must be at least a year.
Right.
Some of them
I've seen 1 month, 6 months.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different terms.
And municipalities each have their own, potentially their own limits when it comes to that. Quickly, I'll just mention too, Strata Act has a provision for if you're in hardship, there's something going on.
That's a really good point too.
You are in a no rental building, and we do have buyers that what happens if I lose my job or something, I'm just forced to sell. There is a provision there, and it takes some letters and some proof and things like that with your Strata Corporation, and it's usually a short term, but.
Yeah, they're not going to let you rent it out forever. But if you can make a case, I've never had a client make a legitimate case and been turned down.
Well, they can't be if it's legitimate.
Yeah, exactly.
The law is written that way.
Yeah.
Something else to note with rentals, the language, when we talk about rental limits, right? So there's a cap on the number of units that can be rented. The language of how that bylaw is written really, really matters. Yeah. Because there's a combination of two towers in the neighborhood here.
Are you talking about Jameson?
No.
Oh
no! It's in Victoria Hill.
Okay.
So the first phase there, the two towers, so again, this is important. Maybe we'll come back to this, Jerry, because I think
this is a top secret tip too.
Okay. Well, I didn't necessarily mean to mention the buildings. But when a building is brand new, by default, the bylaws say there's no limit on rentals. Yeah. And there's no size restriction on dogs. That's how I typically start with things if I'm trying to find a place that allows rentals or dogs. The younger the building, the more likely those things are okay.
It's not till the building has a bad experience with a dog that they're like, oh, we need to change this. Yeah.
Now, that strata decided to put a cap on the number of units that could be rented.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is the way they structured the language was that the cap is 60 units.
Yeah.
There's currently 80 rented, but the language said that the 60 that are counted only count to new ones after the bylaw was enacted.
So the people who are grandfathered, because this is something we haven't talked about, when you're an original owner and they change the rental bylaws, you get some special rules that apply to you.
Yeah.
It's not quite as simple as you can rent it forever, but for our purposes, we might as well say.
If you're buying a building built in the last 10 years, there should be a rental disclosure statement, which will give you info on how that was.
But you get to keep renting. So they, in that one, said those people don't count?
They don't count against the accumulated
Interesting.
cap. Yeah, so it's it says 80 are rented, but then you go to the manager, hey, can I rent one? They're oh yeah, we got room for 40.
Wow.
And it's huge for resale. Yeah. That's a big segment that's buying condos for investment purposes. And they would just write that building off if they just took that agent's word potentially.
Interesting.
So Jared was telling us that's our top secret one for when people want to rent something.
Well, it's good that we talked about it on our podcast.
Yeah. Good job.
The Jameson thing.
Sorry, I'm just going to cut that out.
You can't cut that out. That's super interesting. You know about the Jameson rental situation, the towers.
Well, I know that they have a limit.
They do.
Oh, but they divide it by the two towers.
Yes. So they have, and I'm going to make up the number, but I think it's right. I think it's only 6 can be rented in the unit, but it's 3 per building. So if there's no rentals in building 1, but building 2 already has 3, building 2 can't rent.
It makes
anymore.
it sound like there's room for 3.
Yeah,
but
so you got to be careful when you're. Nobody's buying in there to rent because they only allow 6 of the whole. But there can be some funny little makeups.
A weird little bit there. So that's kind of enough on rentals. Last thing, okay, rentals. We're talking about occupying the suite. Little one that's kind of a really interesting thing to pay attention to because some stratas enforce it and some don't. Is number of occupants based on the number of bedrooms.
And this is one that you're going to get confused on.
Yeah.
Because that bedroom was advertised to you as a bedroom.
Yeah, thought you were buying a 2-bedroom.
Marketed as a 2-bedroom.
But what if on the Strata Plan, which, spoiler alert, we're going to talk Strata Plans later.
Another exciting, thrilling topic.
What if it says it's a den?
Yeah, the original developers' marketing called it a den.
Yeah.
So they're saying, well, you can have 2 occupants per bedroom.
Yeah.
So your 1,000 square foot one in den is technically only a 1-bedroom, so you can only have 2 occupants. And you thought you're going to take that 12 by 12 room and put 1 or 2 kids in it.
Yeah.
Now, some stratas, they just push that aside and say, no, we're not going there.
I would say most stratas don't
it's not a standard bylaw that we typically see.
But there are some that do.
But some of the stratas that have that as a bylaw don't enforce it. They look the other way. No big deal. Some of them, though, go, no, this was marketed in 1994 as a 1 in den. You may have 2 occupants in here only. Yeah. And if you go otherwise, we will be fining you every week according to the law.
Yeah. A family that came to one of our open houses a couple weekends ago they were there. They weren't actually quite interested in that property, but their place is on the market right now because I saw them with kids. And yeah, that was one of the reasons. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, and I guess that brings us to age restriction too.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about was I think if you want to put in a bylaw that hurts your value as a property owner.
You want to bring property values down in the building.
You should consider putting in an age restriction.
Yeah. So which age restrictions are enforceable by law, Jeff?
So the only 2 that are legally enforceable is 19 plus and 55 plus. And that's because age restrictions are actually against the Human Rights Code. And I don't know the details of why, but when it was challenged, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that they would make 2 exceptions, that it was okay to have an adult-only building and a more senior-only building. So 19 plus, 55 plus.
Yeah, so those they let go.
And you do get 45 plus buildings still in
they
the
exist,
West.
Yeah.
Technically, they're not enforceable, although do you want to move into a strata and then start fighting with everybody constantly?
Well, maybe you do if it's a smoking deal.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And it's particularly relevant for us in New West because there's several townhouses and we're townhouse challenged.
Yeah, all of Fraserview was developed as a seniors kind of, or an adult community, which is weird because it's a gigantic hill.
Yeah.
And some of these places are on different level, like multi-level homes, like
totally.
2-3 levels. And they would just be amazing candidates for our families and things like that. And we have to write them off the list because of those age restrictions.
Yeah, I mean I'll just come out and say it. The townhouses in Jameson Court are the ones that, I mean, that's all one giant hill. They're 2 to 3 levels. Every time I get a listing in there, I get nonstop calls from families who would love to live in there, and they can't. And that building would skyrocket in value if they ever decided to remove
potentially 6 figures plus.
I think so.
In value,
adding $100,000 easy.
I think it would be
$100,000.
Yeah. If you're listening,
you
live in one of those stratas. Do yourself a favor.
Make a little money.
Yeah.
Last item for bylaws. Let's touch on it quickly because we did talk about it in episode 27 regarding marijuana legalization.
Oh.
But smoking bylaws can really matter if you are a smoker or if you're a non-smoker and you don't want to be affected by it.
You want to rehash that one?
No.
Oh, I see what you did there.
You want to hear?
Oh, I didn't even mean to.
No. If you
dad
didn't listen
wit.
to episode 27, Jared and I have a pretty good debate about how we think that maybe should.
That's true.
should
That was
roll
one of
out.
my favorite moments on this show. So we don't have to.
No, let's not do it again.
Get
But
back to that.
But to summarize, Strata can go as far as saying no smoking anywhere within the private property boundary, anywhere at all.
And we've seen that in a few buildings.
That one's becoming more and more common, and you need to read that one because the specifics of it. Because sometimes it's you know tobacco and weed. Sometimes even vaping. Sometimes it's not even in your own suite.
Yeah.
So not in your suite, not on your balcony, not outside on the terrace. Nowhere. Sometimes you can smoke only in your own unit. Which is going to affect your resale value. But if that's how you want to live, you go right ahead.
Yeah, I worried about that one a bit when we started seeing a couple buildings coming in with them, but it seems like that's just the way things are going. So it's not necessary. If it applies to most of them, it shouldn't affect values too much. I wouldn't think.
Right.
So that's the first thing that gets people's attention, right?
Yeah.
Is bylaws. How does this affect my individual lifestyle? That's probably what we get asked, like we said, first and foremost, right?
Yes.
And the next most common question would be,
what are the strata fees and what do they include?
What about we miss bikes?
Oh, you want to talk about bikes?
Bylaws. Bikes.
Bike bylaws?
People have expensive bikes now.
Yep.
Some buildings have bike lockers, some do not. I mean, you guys probably have experienced this a ton of times, but I've got a $4,000 bike. And there's no way in hell I'm putting that in the general population bike storage area. I'm putting it in my place or on my balcony. So look out for, you can have rules that you can't have it on the balcony, but in the suite you can have rules that you don't even want it. They don't want them in the elevator. So
that exact scenario came up on a listing of mine last week. And yeah, now luckily enough, when they pitched their case, it was no big deal. They made an exception. I think a lot of stratas are going to have to make exceptions for that. But let's talk strata fees.
Okay, step one.
What do you mean maintenance fee?
Maintenance fee. What's in the maintenance fee?
Well, let's actually talk about that language too, because I really feel like they should be called strata fees, not maintenance fees.
How about operating fees?
Operating fees would be good language. I think that the problem with calling them maintenance fees is people think that they're for maintenance, and then when you have to pay extra money to do your roof, people are upset.
What have I been paying for? I've been paying every month. I thought I was paying for this. Yeah, I guess the most important part is your strata fees are designed to include everything that is expected to happen on a recurring annual basis.
Sure.
Right? And everything that's going to happen less frequently than a year is completely separate financial plan.
Right.
So that's the baseline. Fees are calculated based on the square footage of your unit. We'll talk about that more when we kind of dissect what a strata plan is. It's important, Jared. We should probably talk about a strata plan.
We've double teased the strata plan at this point.
If there's something worse, it's then bylaws are the most boring thing.
Well, we talked about bylaws for 14 minutes. But the strata plan is going to say, okay, you have 1,000 square feet in your unit, and the total building has 60,000 square feet of residential space. So your share is a percentage of that, and that's how it's calculated based on just the total annual operating cost. And then the fees are just added up based on how much the strata is providing for you.
Right.
So the most common thing is if you have a management company, you got your management service in there. Landscaping and gardening is always taken care of. The fire insurance for the building. And then what starts to become different is how much other maintenance they do on a regular basis, maintenance contracts, and then utility type stuff, right?
Utilities is important because every municipality is a little bit different. In New West, the city's billing the stratas as a whole. So you're not getting that extra bill once a year.
You're talking about like water,
sewer.
Right.
I don't know I think Burnaby, you get a city bill. But some of the other municipalities it's not included in the strata fee, which is, I think, maybe $100 or so.
Well, it could be up to like $100 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can make a big difference. I mean, the biggest time to look out for that is if you're buying a townhouse, because some townhouse developments, the water, sewer, and garbage is included in your monthly fee, and for others, it's not.
Right.
And that can be very confusing where you're looking at two and you think the fee is like, wow, it's $120 difference. Yeah. But the $120 could be precisely that one thing that you don't know you're going to get a bill for.
Yeah, you didn't
June.
budget for it.
Yeah.
So normal things that it includes, usually it's most often buildings include the hot water. If you're talking condos, it's more typical.
I'd be hesitant to say most often.
A lot
see
of the
a lot
time.
of individual hot water heaters within the unit. Talking about domestic hot water systems.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have, but you can have your own hot water tank in your unit. That's what, maybe 20% of the time?
Yeah. I like it when they have their own. It takes up some space, and it's another thing you're looking out for, but
Yeah.
I think it's easier on the buildings.
It's less pressure on the pipe system, and it's also you pay for what you use.
Yeah, exactly. So you keep it as a rental. Less usually their pipes seem to last. I don't want to say usual, generalizations, but
Yeah.
it is it is easier on the plumbing system. So the plumbing, you just have one cold line going into the units, and so they usually last longer.
One thing I wanted to talk about with strata fees was the idea of whether it's better to have a higher strata fee and to try and cover those long-term projects. Like a lot of the depreciation reports, which we'll talk about later, will give a suggested, you should raise your strata fee to this price and then you never have to pay an assessment again. Or to have a lower strata fee and then pay the assessments as they come up on the projects. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
You go too high, you just scare everybody off.
Yeah.
There's a point. I'd say once you get to like 500 and up, gets a bit scary for people. That it just seems like outrageous.
So let's say hypothetically $400 a month covers your strata management, maintenance, operating costs.
Yeah.
So anything above 400 goes into this savings fund. It's called the Contingency Reserve Fund. So you can go 400, you could bump that up to 450, and you're only contributing about 10% of your total operating cost. Or you can go to 500, or you could go to $600 a month, right? So if you were at that $600 mark, like you say, Jer, like that becomes intimidating to...
The optics of it is a deterrent to people.
Now, as a homeowner, you're putting $200 away into a savings account.
Yeah.
So $2,400 a year, you're putting it into a savings account. And you do that for 6 years while you live there. And you've saved up $13,000 in savings that you've contributed. And you go to sell, none of that money has been spent yet.
Yes.
There's a contingency fund that says we've got $1 million in the bank, and your agent is marketing this property for you and saying the strata fees are $600 a month. The great news is we got $1 million in the bank. You should probably pay, $15,000 more for this 2-bedroom condo than the one down the street.
Yep.
Is anybody doing that?
Nope.
No.
I find usually like downsizer clients buying in a building that they know they're going to be in for maybe 10 plus years.
Yeah.
That's a bonus. They don't usually care. And usually those people are buying like a bigger property. So maintenance fees are going to be a bit higher. Strata fees, whatever you want to call them. So they don't, that's good. That's planning. That just shows that they're on top of things. But a lot of condo buyers or first time buyers just getting into the market, they don't want to spend an extra $100 a month on their operating fee for a roof in 10 years when they know they're going to be out of there in 5.
Well, and I completely agree with what Matt said. You're not going to get the value. Like, you're not going to, when you sell, be like, look, they're doing the roof in 5 years, but I've already paid for 3 years worth of that roof. So,
have some of that money
5
back.
and 8, I probably should get 40% extra value because I've prepaid that. Like, it just doesn't.
No, you
work
don't
out
get
that way.
rewarded for that savings account.
Yeah.
But you pump the money into it.
Yeah.
Now, and that's when you sell. Right? Now, if
Yeah.
you're living there, it's nice. You've got that consistency, this peace of mind.
Yeah.
That part can work. Like you said, Jared, if you know you're going to be there long term, people are maybe a little more sort of accommodating for it. But that's why for us as marketers who help sell these properties or help people decide if they should buy them, going too high on the fees just doesn't reward you. You know? So that's sort of the general optics of it.
And there are people that will just write you off.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, these buildings look exactly the same. This one cost me $150 more a month. I'd rather put that into equity.
Yeah. And I think that one thing I have in my notes here to try to remember to bring up is to ask that question. If you're looking at a strata and the fees are really high, don't come at it from a combative perspective, like, why are these fees so high? But like, can you help me understand, is there a good reason why they're high? And it might be because the fees are $580, but $180 a month is going into contingency fund. Now, if the fees are $580 and $50 a month goes into contingency fund, then you got a problem. You've maybe got a mismanaged strata there.
Have you guys ever, when they were doing an extra fee, like, okay, we're going to save up. I can think of a building specifically down at the Quay that was saving up for their pipes. And so they raised their fees instead of doing an assessment. When those pipes got done, they did not lower their strata fee. Have you guys ever seen one of those situations where they raise strata fees specifically for a project and then actually lower it afterwards?
I haven't seen it. There's been talk. One of the places we've sold recently, there was talk of we're on track now. But the thing with building repairs, they don't just happen at once.
Yeah.
You do the plumbing, and there's potentially something in 5 years.
There's another one coming, guys.
They're on cycles.
And you're used to paying that new strata fee, so...
Well, you do realize that
really
income
use the
tax
money.
was a short-term measure in the war.
Yeah.
Short-term, guys.
And the other thing, and this is maybe a little bit more rare, but some of the older buildings where the occupants don't necessarily have the money for some of these big capital projects, they could do loans. So you could have a situation where...
That's a really good point.
I've got all the good points today. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
So encouraging. That's something that usually you'll see that on you'll get a Form B document that will maybe show like future payments or if there's we had one that was like $200 or $300 more than what it typically would be for that loan payment.
Yeah. I had a property manager who was running his strata, and he worked it out. He got the most amazing loan to just pay out all the work, and it was a way better way of doing it than a gigantic assessment. And that was about 2 years ago, and that was the first time I'd seen it. He ran the numbers by me. He's like, "Look, you have to tell people why the strata fee is too high. We're paying off this loan, but it means they don't pay this, and this." And I was like, "Oh, that's a really good idea."
So it should be clearly illustrated, though. I would think on the Form B that
you have to sell it.
Here's this is how it goes, but it should be paid out.
You know what's amazing is we're like half an hour into the show. You just said the word assessment. It's the first time that word came up this episode.
Assessment.
Because really, the whole reason after bylaws, like, does this property allow the lifestyle that you live? The whole reason why we're investigating the strata is to see if there's an assessment on the horizon.
Right.
Or a special levy, however the language is, right?
Yeah.
And for anybody who's trying to understand that, we're going to talk a lot more about how to interpret those documents and look at that later on as we talk about this stuff. But it's a big bill that comes in addition to your monthly fees, this surprise.
Outside of the operating fee, monthly operating expenses.
Yeah, so that goes anywhere from the extreme of the rain screen issues of the past that still are not entirely removed from our region to redoing the plumbing or the roof or painting the exterior or redoing the carpeting and the interior design in the common hallways. They can all come as a special levy.
And when you're reading your strata documents, you want to look out for those AGMs, we call them the annual general meetings, because usually that's when they're deciding on some of these big ticket items.
Yeah, or they have to call a special meeting because something has come up unexpectedly, right?
You guys are getting ahead of yourselves, though.
I know, we're just teasers. We're master teasers today.
Let's stop teasing and get into Strata Plan.
So the Strata Plan helps us break down how all of this impacts each individual owner.
So the Strata Plan's just a bad floor plan, right? That's what we decided.
It's the most boring document, and it's probably overlooked because I mean we look them over for our clients. But when you're a buyer going through these documents, you see this plan that's showing every single floor repeated. You can never read the text.
Totally.
It's all grainy,
and it's just pages and pages.
You're like,
and
I
pages.
get the point.
Yeah, why did you even send this to me?
So
why did we?
What is the client or the person moving into a strata supposed to do with the Strata Plan?
Frame it and put it on the wall.
Matt, what is the client or the person looking at the strata supposed to do with the Strata Plan?
I think the biggest part is we talked about it and how your fees are calculated is understand what is yours.
This helps you understand your percentage of the building that you own.
Or maybe there's some other stuff that's also yours. Not just the percentage that you own, the percentage you have limited exclusive access to.
Okay.
So that can go a long way.
One might call that limited common property.
That would be correct.
I think you could look at it as if you're in a high rise or a low rise or what have you, and you didn't necessarily look too closely at the floor. You came out of the elevator, you went to the suite. Now you can look back and see my unit is on, so it'll show you your floor. It's not going to show you the walls necessarily in your suite, but it shows you like, okay, it's on this corner, or there's a stairwell beside me that I didn't even notice was there, so I'm not sharing a wall.
Right.
There's a garbage chute I didn't notice that was there, or what have you. So you could it'll kind of outline some of those things that are on the floor that could be an issue.
Well, and it used to be much more important because it used to be the only way we could verify parking, maybe. Now parking gets verified in the Form B.
Thankfully.
But a lot of times we were digging through the Strata Plan hoping there was something in there that indicated who owned what parking spots.
Yeah, and if you're wondering what the Form B is, this is definitely going to be a two-parter, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so everything related to documents, depreciation report, Form B, how to read and interpret those, that's going to be part 2.
Yeah.
But the Form B is a snapshot that tells you specifically what your parking and storage allocation are. But if we're on the main floor, like Jared's talking about, the floor that you're on, you've got the perimeter walls of your unit, and inside of that is your strata lot. That's yours. That's exclusively yours. That's what you're buying a title to.
Yeah.
Now, your balcony typically is not part of your strata lot. You don't own that exclusively.
But you have the exclusive right to use it.
Correct. Yeah. It's private property to you. And but the reason why they do that is actually very helpful for the owner. It's because the maintenance is then the responsibility of the Strata Corporation.
Correct.
So you're not being held liable for taking care of what is essentially part of the exterior of the building.
So what else what about the insides of the walls, the guts? Is that mine? Who owns the pipes?
Technically, they're yours.
Yes.
Yeah. Once you break the perimeter there.
Yeah.
I don't know how far in you have to go, a millimeter or through the drywall, but once you're inside.
My old townhouse, we had a lot of people very frustrated because we sent out in winter. I was on Strata at the time and noticed to cap your outside hose bibs. And then when people didn't and they burst, they're like, well, this isn't ours. This is your problem. And you're like, well, first of all, you did this. We sent you out exact instructions on what to do. And no, that is yours. You have to maintain that.
Yeah. So you've got, so whether it's yours to use or Strata's, usually it's indicated by a C, common property, or LCP, limited common property. LCP means you have your use.
Really resisting saying you know me.
Could be good if you have a terraced balcony, if you're a ground floor unit.
Did you say a terraced balcony?
Terrace. It's a little bit earlier than we normally record. It's quite early in the morning.
It's got good sight lines.
Yeah. Oh, God. Matt just took it to a different level.
I'm talking about what, you don't like a view of the river?
Anyway.
Jeez.
You might not know where the boundaries are of what's like a ground floor unit, where is it yours, where is it's not, what's common property.
Yeah, that's
and what's
really important on
common. I thought those shrubs and garden was mine, but no, It's actually Strata.
Yeah, your patio stones go to here. That's where it ends, and the grass beyond is shared. And technically, if your neighbor or somebody from 24s up wants to come put a lawn chair on that grass, that's okay. That's allowed. And that can go a long way, common versus limited common, right?
Inside the unit, we have the number for the square footage, square meters.
Yeah, it's all in square meters because it's Canada.
Yeah. I want to mention something on that, and we kind of get this brought up, at open houses and showings and things like that. It's common practice now for us to do professional measurements, floor plans, things like that. And there's several companies that do it, and their measurement techniques seem to be kind of different. So we'll see. We've had 2 floor plan companies do the same unit and come up with quite different numbers.
Just a little error here and a little error there, and all of a sudden the math can be different, right?
Yeah. So when we use those floor plans where somebody measured it with a laser, we'll market it with those measurements. They took the measurements. There's their disclaimers and things like that on it. But it could differ. 2 similar units could differ. So when you're looking, and some people get carried away with price per square foot and things like that, you want to reference the Strata Plan if you really want to see, was this unit a similar size or not? Because it's more of an apples to apples comparison because they were done at the same time by the same company.
I think before we move on to something else too, the last thing, when we were talking about limited common property and common property, it's really important to know whether your parking stall and your storage locker are limited common or common. And this is the thing, this is like lawsuit territory. I've seen multiple times where people sue each other over this one. They thought it was limited common, meaning you have exclusive right to use this, and then it turns out it's common. And what common property in a locker or a parking stall means is you might be allowed to use that spot, but Strata can come one day and say, you know what, we want to give that spot to Mrs. Jones.
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do.
Nope, because Strata owns that land.
Yeah, they might say, yeah, we had a locker, but we're going to use that for something else, or we're going to give it to someone else, and there's nothing you can do. So you really need to know.
Yeah, now the bylaws can be written differently, that they can't take away your locker. They can just reallocate which locker is yours.
A lot of them will guarantee you a locker, not just, and almost always with parking, you're guaranteed a spot, not this specific
so allocation can get moved around, and that's but most, let's as scary as this sounds, most stratas, the parking and storage is common property. That's been my experience. There are I've seen very few where parking is limited common property.
Yeah.
In Newest Minister.
Yeah.
I mean, Vancouver, I think it's their...
Yeah, I come across a lot of limited common
property parking?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't, but it's something important to look for, right? Because that allocation can be moved. And that's why in every offer you see us write, we put on all these disclaimers in to remind the clients involved, right? That
it's an assigned number.
Yeah.
It's not you don't have ownership of this spot.
But you can see different stuff too, right? Where a developer will say, I own all of the parking and I'm going to lease this parking spot to you for 99 years.
Right.
Right. I've seen 99-year leases on parking.
Yeah, technically you can have lease parking too, for sure.
You know, there's some weird stuff going on in there. So the Strata Plan does really matter, as much as this sounds like Jer said, oh, it's just a crummy floor plan.
Yeah.
It can really affect your strata fees.
Right.
Because if that balcony is included in your Strata Plan and you've got a huge one and all of your other, like you're 1 out of 6 units on a floor and you have a massive balcony and the other 5 have small balconies, it makes your strata your share of the total square footage a lot bigger than maybe it should be.
Right.
Depending on how valuable that terrace is. Or you have this massive terrace and it's not included in your strata fee, but the strata has to come in and maintain it and do all the rest of this work for you, and you're in small company, but your fees are the same as all the other 2-bedroom units.
And do you guys know when the rule changed? Because and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that they're not allowed anymore to include balconies in the newer developments.
No, this was most of the time when you see this kind of stuff, it's from the 70s.
Yeah, I was guessing that it must have changed somewhere around the 80s.
So it's only in the older stuff.
They like to put it on their marketing materials, though.
Yeah, well, and they're allowed to advertise that it has an amazing balcony. But that's also... So when you... Oh, I'm going to go off on a tangent. I'm going to avoid going off on a tangent because we got lots to talk about.
Well, and this is important. So the other part is you're paying for this square footage, but there are times where inside of your unit, there's interior space that somehow wasn't included on the Strata Plan. We've seen it where there's been lofts that have been developed. So now you've got a 2-bedroom floor plan that's just like all of the units below you, but you've also added 35% of floor space and you don't pay fees for that.
Right, because they didn't actually amend the Strata Plan when they gave them that extra square footage.
Yeah, it wasn't part of the original Strata Plan drawing.
Yeah.
I saw the most amazing, unique one this week with a transaction we're working on where outside of the unit there's a wall that divides it. You go out and through a separate door, and there's 120 square feet behind it that's technically like storage.
Yeah.
But it's got such good size to it, you can effectively use it as a den and all sorts of other sort of practical functions.
You could put a bathroom in there if they'd let you.
Skeet ball table.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of value in that to a homeowner, like real practical use. And it's 120 square feet that you do not have to pay strata fees on.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, so it's
pretty rare. I mean, we haven't seen that before, but it was.
But when you see stuff like that, it helps you understand. You go, wow, my strata fees are low. And then the other way that you can really benefit as one unit within the many in your strata, one is to be one of many, maybe in a tower, right? That could be it. Or if the average size of a condo in your building is 1,000 square feet, like most of the condos on the floor are 1,000 square feet. There's 6 of them. 5 of them are 1,000 square feet, and one of them is 650 square feet.
Right.
You're going to pay a really disproportionately low strata fee for that 650 square feet because everyone else is sort of bringing up the average.
Now, keep in mind that this swings both ways.
Ooh.
And if you are thinking about buying a townhouse that is attached to a high-rise, and your townhouse is 3 times the size of the average high-rise unit in the high-rise, when it comes time to pay your portion of a special levy, it's going to be big.
So let's say an average 2-bedroom in that building is 900 square feet,
and
the townhouse is 1,800 square feet.
Yeah.
So it's double. So all the 2-bedroom condos are paying $350 a month for strata fees.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
That's low. The townhouse is paying double.
Yeah.
$700 a month. For what?
Yeah. Well, and let's talk when it's time to do the roof.
Yeah.
And usually people are okay. They might be looking at those townhouses, and they're fairly common. Attached to you build a high rise, and you've got some land there to build some townhouses.
Yeah.
Maintenance fee, okay, it's a bit higher, but it's bigger square footage, fine.
Yeah.
But they might not be thinking about this. Is the more the modern design. So
super off topic, but I do want to mention it. The other thing that happens in those townhouses connected to high rises, I sold one of them to my parents-in-law, and people throw cigarette butts off their balconies. And
it's the other thing to think about.
we never would have thought about it, but they're cleaning up cigarette butts every day.
Well, and then you go in as the townhouse segment of the owners, and you're like, there's 8 of us. We need to do something. And there's 200 of us.
You don't have a voice.
But you get your vote.
And that's hard. Yeah. And that was, and I mean, just to touch back on the adding of square footage, Matt and I, we sold that a penthouse a while ago that had the solarium added on to the terrorist balcony. Huge. That's a fair amount of square footage.
It's 1,200 square feet of solarium.
Fully Strata sanctioned. But they'll never, to vote through the square footage change to amend the Strata Plan. It's not going to happen.
Well, I don't think they should, because a solarium doesn't count. Did they fully finish it inside?
Yeah, it was interior space.
You see that in Vancouver all the time.
Yeah.
You see solariums that are then built and they're designed to be knocked away and do it.
So we know when people come in how their lifestyle fits the building. We understand how the fees are calculated based on the Strata Plan. We got a sense of what the fees are. Can we touch a little bit more, but maybe not too much, on the budget itself? Like, what are the line items here that fill up the fees?
Sure, Matt, go ahead and talk about that.
I don't.
Well played.
I don't really want to talk about
the guy that canceled Christmas wants to talk about the budget.
I think the important thing to understand when you're looking at a budget is the first thing I look at isn't so much like, it looks like a lot of money they're spending. It costs a lot of money to run a high rise or low rise or whatever it is. One of the things I like to check for is their projected budget and then how much they're actually spending.
So are they on budget?
Not even like, are they aware of what's going on and how? Because I don't mind if they're over, but if they are over, I want to see like, okay, were there surprises that came up? Not just, oh, these guys don't know how to come up with a budget.
Like it never snows here, and then all of a sudden this year we've got thousands of dollars in snow removal because it just dumped for 2 months.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say most stratas go over budget. Like, that's not weird to be over budget. Would you guys agree with that?
I think I see more under budget.
Really? Okay.
And then it just goes back into CRF.
Yeah.
I get concerned if I see them go over budget, especially if it happens more than once out of 3 years.
Yeah.
It's usually an indication that there's some mechanical piece of the building that's foreshadowing future repairs, and they've had to do service calls more
I usually want to work backwards and just find out what was going on. As long as there's a reasonable explanation, I'm not freaked out. But if they went over budget because they gave their maintenance people 3 raises that are all related to the strata manager, we had to fire a strata manager for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Bit of a conflict of interest.
Yeah, she was hiring family at way higher rates.
Oh, that's no good.
I wonder about that with new developments when the builders building all these properties and they go, okay, here's your management company.
Oh, okay.
If you're in a new building, should you just start fresh? Be like, cool, thanks. We're going to get our
maybe do a whole episode. I had drinks with a building manager once, a few months ago, who told me what goes on with how I could be getting in a lot of trouble for.
Do you want to do a conflict of interest episode?
But the way some of them pick who gets put in is terrifying.
Especially,
and you're talking about a brand new development.
Yep.
Right. The way that those are allocated out of the gates. Yeah. Because once you're in, you're the incumbent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially when it comes to warranty things.
I won't talk Canada because this stuff is starting to leak in here, but in the States, it's very common for those management companies to be getting tons of kickbacks from the companies to get the contracts. Like, they're paying to be the guy in the building because they know the building will keep them once
they're in. Yeah. So then they're getting a monthly elevator service contract, right? And who should we hire? Otis or Richmond? And
it's just easy. We've already got these people, but we've
got a really good relationship with Richmond Elevator. Tell me more about this relationship.
My understanding is
they
that
bought
there's
my
some
boat.
really sketchy stuff that happens in the States that's trying to leak its way here, and a lot of the strata managers are trying to keep it out, but that is
there is a lot of skepticism, I think, in every strata corporation, like a certain segment of the members, the owners, who really worry that the management companies are getting a lot of kickbacks and their recommendations aren't necessarily in the best interest of the strata, but it's helping line their pockets financially.
Totally. Talking about management companies is, we could waste a lot, or not waste a lot of time, but you could really dig into that.
We can go down a rabbit hole
from documents, separate bid, cash only. So much.
I guess the first thing I really want to say about management companies is that when you're there as a homeowner, you just kind of think like, okay, well, this is who we have and this is what we do. And you don't really think to change much. And the only time a lot of homeowners, if you're not on council, realize that your management company is hurting you is when you're trying to sell.
Yes.
Right? They get in the way of the transaction, and we can talk a lot about how they get in the way, but the management company gets in the way, and they actually devalue the property in some facets. And then the seller realizes this because we're communicating what the problems are, but they don't really care to do anything about it because they're moving out.
They're not going to be their client anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the management company doesn't really have any negative consequence for that, right? We're going to talk about management companies and meetings and minutes and that kind of stuff, and that's how we'll close things out. But this is actually a perfect segue because we got a question for this episode for Question of the Week.
What?
And it's perfect. So let's do a Question of the Week.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
How's that working out for you? What? Being clever?
Who knows where thoughts come from? They just appear.
You're listening to Multiple Offers, a real estate show.
Our question this week comes from Chris and Emma. Chris and Emma are first-time buyers looking at condos.
Okay.
We are right in the middle of a transaction, so I thought they would be perfect to ask for a question. So I said, what would be a question that you think we should ask here? And his question is two-parter. How is the strata manager and the management company chosen?
Oh, that's a good...
How is it chosen? So that's question one. And the second is, can tenants or even renters of within the strata attend strata meetings?
Great question.
So let's go to first question. How is the strata manager or management company chosen?
So at the beginning of the building, they are put in by the developer. And once you get enough people in there, then you actually create a strata. But the developer, usually the management company, is somebody handpicked by the developer. A lot of times that goes south very quickly, and they'll vote to oust the management
who
company.
votes?
The owners.
The strata council.
It's actually just council.
Do they not need to have so council can without, is that true?
Yeah, council is running is steering the ship. They're in charge of the business.
I thought if you got rid of your management company, you needed to have...
It's just like hiring a roofing company.
Interesting, because I've seen many times where they do have a special general meeting. Now, that might just be damage control to have everybody have a vote to get rid. Like, I've seen that multiple times. But what you're saying is technically they do not have to. They could just fire.
That's my understanding. I might be proven wrong on this one.
Interesting.
Because I can't think of real specifics to back me up.
That would seem like an AGM thing, but maybe they can start the process with getting bids and things.
I sold a building once where they held an SGM to fire council while I had it for sale. And it got so ugly.
So, sorry, not to fire council, to fire management company.
They had an SGM to fire the property manager. They had the meeting, and then they fired
while
them.
they're there taking notes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, no, and like the property manager he started the meeting and then excused himself from the meeting so that he wasn't there. And then we had to get all the documents for our sale, but the management company had just been fired, and we're like, we lost him. We're like, we had to have a 3-month subject removal because it took that long to
sort out all the documents.
It was a disaster.
Too bad, so sad.
Yeah, they were super bitter because they were firing the management company, but not the property manager. The property manager was starting his own company, and they wanted to stay with him. That's why. So the management company was super bitter that he like snaked
totally resisted.
You'd think they'd have like non-compete clauses with their agents. So and then the 2-part was, how do they select the agent?
No.
The strata agent?
Oh, the management company or the manager.
Strata agent. I call them both.
But they're a property manager, but they're within...
The manager is the individual who you're actually
building
dealing
manager
with, and then the company is...
building manager is...
There's separate...
I didn't hear building manager. I thought we were talking about...
No, Jared's just saying that...
I'm just saying that there's different reference things. In strata, you'll have different names sort of thrown around. But the strata agent is the same thing.
That's the same as the property manager.
Yeah.
Let's just use the language property manager.
Property manager.
I feel like that's...
Who is an employee for the management company.
Correct.
Yeah. So just like you can choose quotes from 3 different roofing companies to choose who to do your roof, you can interview and select from different management companies. You hire the company, and then the company allocates an individual to be the manager for that particular strata corporation.
Typically not deciding that, picking and choosing who your person is.
No, unless you choose a very small management company that only has one or two managers.
Yeah. And they can be hit or miss in those companies where you could have, we've gone through one of the buildings, 3 different strata property managers, and one of them was amazing. Like she would answer her phone on like a Friday at 4.
You mean she would actually answer her phone?
Oh, she would answer the phone. Yeah, Shannon.
That's a lot to ask.
Shannon Ray, no relation, but I remember calling her once on like a Friday at 4 o'clock with no intention of talking to a human being.
Yeah,
and she answered the phone like, "Sorry, who is this? Oh my gosh, who just picked up the phone?"
Yeah,
the actual person. So, you can have a strata agent. I feel like with the property managers. A lot of times they've got a lot of other buildings going on. Sometimes they can get flack.
I think they get assigned to too many buildings. I think their companies overwork them for sure.
And so they can, so I think that can be part of the problem when you're dealing with some of these larger firms that they just might have, I don't know how many employees they would have, how many strata managers, but they would.
Well, yeah, they have to overload them to be profitable, right? It's essentially the model is to try to give them everybody more than they can do.
It's like a restaurant. You got to flip tables.
Yeah. It's like, no, if you have as much that you can do an amazing job with, we're not making enough profit here.
Yeah.
And they just get there's too much on their plate, so it's too hard to get through the emails.
It's so hard to get a hold of those people. I mean, they're essentially, they deal with like the fires, but when it comes to us trying to facilitate a sale, getting information from those agents, they're the property managers, is really, really difficult. And that's where I say it can frustrate a sale, right? Is these people are not responsive,
right?
Or the documents that they're providing is inconsistent or incomplete.
Yeah.
And there's that part. And then there's the management companies. I think the biggest thing that I wish Stratas knew when they selected the management company was how uncooperative they can be when it comes time to provide documents to help facilitate a sale.
Yeah.
Right. So to protect the seller, to protect us as the representative of the seller, we order all of the required documents from the management company. Even though the seller may have 90 to even 100% of those documents, they might actually have them all in their possession.
Yeah.
We're going to shift some of that responsibility to the management company to say we're requesting it of you. So if there are any gaps here that we're not aware of, you're going to provide all of this. 2 things happen. 1, there's a timeline as to when they'll deliver those. 2, there's a fee to pay to get those documents. And then 3, sometimes they don't fulfill that properly and we realize that there are gaps and they haven't done their job. The timeline and the fees is the problem that we can have in a lot of these situations, right? Where there's no, I don't know. Am I wrong? Is there no regulation on this?
No, there's no regulation, and you get really stupid things. Like it costs more to get the documents emailed to you than to have them print them all out and mailed to you. And they know you'll pay more because it's convenience, but I mean, all they have to do is hit a button. It's way easier.
These are
on them.
the pet peeves. I think there is a limit. I think it's 14 days is the standard. They can't make it longer than that. I could be wrong, but I believe it's.
There might.
That.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into some pet peeves with?
Let's finish answering the question because there was another second part to that question, which was really easy to answer.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's answer that second parter from Chris and Emma, and then we'll maybe come back to some.
And that was
stuff.
just tenants.
Can an owner or a tenant, a renter, attend strata meetings?
Oh, can an owner or a tenant?
Yeah, either.
You can't just drop in. Usually you have to send a request saying, I'd like to come and talk to you, and then they'll allow you.
You request an audience.
Yeah, owner or tenant, because the tenant does have the the license to be there using the suite. They're using the suite. They're not voting on strata items.
No, tenant can't vote, and you can't just attend meetings unless it's the annual general meeting or a special general meeting where everybody's invited. But I think one thing that's important if you're a tenant and you're interested is you can get copies of the minutes. It's fully within the rights of a tenant to say, I would like the monthly copies of the minutes and whatnot.
So you ask your landlord for that?
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of stratas will just put them on the list of
they'll
email.
just, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there's that option there. And then if you want to attend like a monthly council meeting, the way that works is that the individuals who have been chosen to sit on council, chosen or the only ones who volunteered.
Right. A lot of times it's the only ones. Yeah.
But they're the only ones who are technically privy to the information, like the actual meeting itself.
They actually
from
have
start
an
to finish.
agency duty of, like, just like we have an agency duty to our clients, they have an agency duty to put the stratas best interests first. And a lot of times that means confidentiality. There's stuff that they might not even be allowed to talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
So they sit through that meeting and they know everything that happens. If you just want to drop in, you feel like listening in on a full meeting, that's not permitted, even though you're an owner. If it's a regular council meeting, you can say, I've been having an issue with my neighbor. I'd like to make an appeal regarding pets. I'd like to have an audience. You get to go there. You get your 3 minutes. You say your piece. They give you no feedback. They might ask some questions. They make your decision when you're not in the room.
Yeah, and I mean, you can have more laid-back stratas, but what Matt is describing is the way it's supposed to be done.
Right. And then the difference is the annual meeting or the annual general meeting, or something that's been called unexpectedly a special general meeting. That's when every owner is supposed to attend and is supposed to vote.
Right.
That's when you get your vote as an owner, when something has been proposed. So we'll talk more about the meetings and the structure of that, but I do want to finish on the management companies.
Yeah,
and then we can talk about AGMs and SGMs and that kind of stuff. But I was a bit distracted by the management company thing and the pet peeves.
Okay,
just because I find that things like, you want us to pay for the documents, that's fine, we will pay for it. Why do some of you charge 3 times more than the other guy? And why do some of you only say the only way we will accept payment from you is a personal check? And we're located in downtown Vancouver.
So the personal check thing drives me nuts, just because I think it's bad business. I do believe, I mean, if we're in a free market, they should have the ability to set their own prices. Like, I'm not into price controlling. It annoys me when some of them are larger. The thing I find difficult, though, is the management companies that are charging way more, their owners don't know, because the majority of realtors out there pay for the documents themselves.
That's the issue I wanted to be on the show. Yeah, is that you should, if you're choosing a management company, you should know if and how this is going to affect you when your time comes to sell.
Are they holding your documents hostage? Like, it's a second business that they're running. Is we've collected this information, these documents, and when they're requested by agents, there's a separate business on what we want to charge them.
And if you're thinking, oh well, what's the benefit to me as the listener? The difference can be, let's say you get an offer that needs to be dealt with quickly and you need to get strata documents. Some of these companies might charge you $200 for a 1 or 2 day rush fee, and some of them might charge you $900 or higher for that same thing. And that's a lot of money to try and ask. If you're trying to get things going quickly, I mean,
especially for something that's stored electronically on a computer.
Right. Like, it's literally just, we have to click
PDFs
and fill out the Form B. Like, that, the Form B is the most complicated part of
but it literally takes 6 minutes.
Yes.
It's a pretty quick thing to fill out. So I think from just a seller's perspective is to know that those can be overcharging, they can be not delivering quickly, they can be delivering those documents inaccurately, which is hurting your property.
The thing too, pet peeve with the Form B, just quickly, is a lot of times they're dated, a day or two after you ordered them.
Yeah.
They're making, there's not because there's a turnaround or there's backlog. It's actually dated from before. It's ready. It's just, you have to wait your 14 days because you only paid us $200 instead of $600. Yeah. That's the frustration.
So pay attention to that. And then, so the other thing that your management company is going to do is help facilitate your meetings.
Are you guys okay for time? Because we're at 12:30 already.
Do you have the keys, Chair?
I have everything. Yeah.
I was just thinking,
it's 1 o'clock.
We could wrap up meetings into next episode if we're getting, because meetings is still a pretty big topic.
Well, Jerry, you got to leave here at what, 10 to 1? 1:45?
Tiffany Shores parking. Yeah, 1:45 is kind of when I was going to be walking out your door.
I think it might be better to...
You don't want to do it in 10 minutes?
Well, we got to get through AGM, SGM. I mean, we can try. I'm just...
I don't want to rush it. I want us to have good information.
Okay.
And discussion. Do you guys have an after the credits?
No.
You could fill time with? No.
This episode, I think, has been a good length. I think we'll just...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
We're at an hour and 5 minutes.
Okay, so I think for next time, what we're going to get into is how all the meetings work, and then we're going to discuss engineers' reports and depreciation reports. What else? What other stuff are we going to kind of tease right now that we're going to get into, you guys?
Well, we've talked about these we're going to talk about annual general meetings and council meetings.
Yes. Yeah, all the different meetings will be discussed.
But then we need to help the consumer understand how to dissect the documents that are provided that summarize those meetings.
Correct.
Right? So you get a notice for the meeting, then you get the actual meeting minutes, and what does that mean? So there's all that stuff, engineers reports, depreciation report, all the documents that are sort of associated with this, right?
Yeah.
How to interpret them, how to make sense, and how it all kind of works with, how they're funding things and funding models in terms of maintenance fee, operating fees.
I guess, and then the big part is then dissecting it to realize what is a potential special levy.
Right.
Right. So what do we think based on this depreciation report or based on this engineer's report is upcoming work?
Yeah.
And then what's it going to cost me?
All this and more next time on Multiple Offers. Okay, guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope that you found that informative. If you want to get a hold of Matt or Jeremy, you can reach them at thenewwestguys.com. And if you want to get a hold of me, Geoff McLennan, you can find me at realestatennewwest.com. Please, if you've been enjoying our content, think about leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. It helps us reach out to more people. Thank you guys very much and have a great day.